Greetings and welcome back to another episode of the Daily Run, and today we're playing as Blue Baby. I swear that every time we have a special lady on our hands here, they just contain something that makes it inherently unfun. And last time that was Blank Card, which is one of those items which I wouldn't, like I said, isn't really disliked, but you kind of begrudgingly pick it up, because you know you have to, because it's so good, and it allows you to rate the game, but at the same time, it's always the same process. You always try to get as many consumables, and it's just not that fun. And in this particular case, we have Restock, which I feel like suffers from very much the same problem. At least Restock is a passive item, and it still requires some other thought behind it, and especially as Blue Baby, we don't really have a lot of ways of going about getting a lot of money, except maybe getting some 2 diamonds, blank card shenanigans. But what I'm trying to say is we really can't take advantage of the Temperance cards, or maybe even the Ivy Bag, because we have a very limited health container. I guess, you know, if you get some other items, you could get enough money for you to be able to essentially buy infinite spirit hearts, but also fuel your items and things like that. But again, that does require a lot of combos, or at least a lot of items working really well with each other, and the likelihood of that happening isn't too high. But just it existing, I can't say I'm too happy about it, just because it does allow for breaking potential, and it's more than anything just a game of patience and just a game of trying to figure out what the best way of going about it is. And when you introduce some other variables, like getting the Forget Me Now early on, or maybe you involve variable devil deals, then you really have a very fun experience on your hands where really you can't do anything about it. And the fact that this run goes to Mom's foot, it just makes it a bit more questionable or dubious, if I can say so myself. But with that said, I can't really be too mad, because the first item that I found in the very first treasure room was Telekinesis, and you might say, that's an okay item, but why would you be so excited about it? And I'm glad you asked, hypothetical person I'm talking to, because Telekinesis is an item that was added in the booster pack update, and it was actually designed and made by me, which is, I'm not trying to be show-offy, but it's a really exciting feeling to have an item that I've designed and made with code to actually be in the game, and for me to be able to find it and then showcase it, and for other people to enjoy it. And I feel like it's one of those privileges, in some sense, that really does immortalize you into the game. Obviously, I realize that the idea is not entirely original. It's such an obvious Matrix reference that I just couldn't help myself. I just thought it would be a cool concept. But what I was really going for with Telekinesis especially is for it to be an active item which has a different use than most active items. Active items in this game are usually very binary. You use them and something happens. But in the case of Telekinesis, while of course it does still follow that logic, it's basically a 2-second recharge item. You can keep using it, and it's all up to you to time it and then use it at the most opportune moments. And of course that is when you have the most bullets on the screen, or maybe when you really need to get out of a sticky situation. But also it can be just really good against bullet hell enemies. So it does provide that niche use of active items that some of them have, so it's good against things like Harsh, Mega Satan, because it essentially nullifies all the challenges that they have, and for that you need to obviously hold it. But against some other items or bosses or just enemies, it does give you that little window of extra protection. So for example, if you're fighting against the hosts in a very narrow corridor like I did in just a few rooms ago, that does the active item Telekinesis would allow you to just defend yourself against it if you timed it properly. And I really enjoy the concept of items like this, and whenever I try to make modded items, I always try to maybe put a little bit of a spin on it, so it's not just the regular, you know, something happens when you press the spacebar button, but it's always something that really changes the mechanics of the game, or at least tries to push them to their limits. I don't have that many items made in the workshop, something like 5 in total, and all of them I feel like are unique in some regards. Some of them are obviously a bit more robust than others that just kind of gained with experience when I was experimenting, trying to get the tutorials up and things like that. But overall, it's a fun experience to design an item, to actually see it in the game and make it work, and then a huge privilege for it to be chosen to be added into the game officially, so everybody can enjoy it. And it's just one of those things which I'm always excited about, and I wish I could have kept it for the entire run, and I feel like my time will come. I'll have a daily where I can just use Telekinesis, but in this particular case we found the Forget Me Now, and the opportunities just were a bit too good to pass out. If this was just a regular run that really went to, I would say, Mega Satan, I wouldn't care too much about the Forget Me Now. I might even leave it behind, but because of the stipulations, because this is only going to Mom's foot, because we have the room bag, because we're trying to get as far as possible, but also to boss rush and things like that, having the Forget Me Now is so important, because not only does it give you more chances to find a sacrifice room, it also gives me more chances and more floors and rooms to explore to find an AWAS rune if that one doesn't happen to drop earlier on me. And obviously all of that combined mind will not only give me something like 3,000 points, which I would get with exploration bonus, but they will gain you significantly more over time just because of all those objectives and how the scoring system works. But that's neither here or there. I guess, again, this is just one of those problems with Mom's Food dailies. You're kind of forced into picking certain items if you want to maximize your score, and while you can get away with it on some of the harder dailies because that exploration bonus isn't that influential in the whole scheme of things, I feel like you really can't skip it if you want to get a really, really high score in dailies like this. But I said but a few too many times. Nevertheless, I also say that too much. Well, how can I continue? Let's just start talking about something else. So, special daily. It was a special daily, and if you just didn't catch what was going on at the start, we started out with Restock, which is, again, not that exciting, but we also had Callus as our trinket, and it's one of those trinkets which is, it's a great trinket. It actually does something actively for you that isn't negative, and it's not a bad thing at all, because it does allow you to walk over spikes, it does allow you to navigate the rooms a little bit easier, and that's always exciting. But maybe the biggest thing about it is that you're very much used to avoiding spikes in general. That idea is so ingrained in our heads, or at least in my head because I've played the game for too long, is that when you walk into a spike, you know it's your fault for taking damage. There's no excuse because the spike is there, it's in the middle of the room, and the only variable that changes that direction is you moving. It's never the enemy AI maybe walking into you or jumping in a weird direction because of some fear shot, but it's you walking into the spike, and it's entirely on you. So you very quickly become to associate that feeling of failure and you taking dumb damage with you walking over the spikes. So it's very ingrained, and even when you have the Callus trinket, and especially because I gold pit and smelted it, it works essentially as a passive item, so I really can't even drop it. So I don't have that visual indicator that I have that trinket, which means that at the start I wasn't really even aware that I can walk over spikes. I just kind of forgot that it existed, and this is something that happens so often with me and with the Callus trinket, because it's so ingrained in us that I just forget that I have it, and for that reason I make some silly mistakes like forgetting that I can actually walk over spikes, and I'll still try to avoid them. So it's a good idea for sometimes for you to accidentally walk on a spike. Then you'll maybe wonder for half a second, why the hell didn't I take damage? And then you'll realize, oh, it's because I have the Callus trinket, and now I can actually take advantage of that and just walk everywhere, and it's not that big of a deal. And I do enjoy that, because it's one of those trinkets, I feel like more trinkets should be like this, and I thought what maybe some other trinkets like that would entail, but for example, the ladder, which allows you to go over 1 foot wide gaps. I feel like another trinket would be good, which would allow you to walk over rocks, and it would essentially allow you to phase through rocks, and that would allow you to basically do that. The rocks would still be there, they would still inhibit your shots from going through them, unless you had spectral clears, of course, but you would be just able to walk through rocks, and I feel like that would be, again, a very nice idea for a trinket, because it would have that same uniqueness to it, but it will also have a mechanic that is unexplored and also quite intuitive in some regards. I don't know what exactly the trinket would be, how it would look like, or what its name would even be, so if you have any ideas, let me know. I might just make it, because I feel like that might be a fun experience or a fun project. I feel like it shouldn't be too hard to make and to actually put into the game, but I'm not sure. I haven't actually played with Collision that much, but I think it just literally changing on variables, it shouldn't be that big of a deal. But going back to the daily here, I managed to die in this room, and it's, again, one of those things which I felt like I was a bit stronger than I actually was. I picked up that stotch, I felt like, okay, I'm really gonna pop off now. And as soon as that happened, I walked into a room with pretty much, I won't say unavoidable damage, but it can become really difficult with champion enemies. They have a bit too much HP. I tried to dodge my explosive butt bomb as well, and the enemies and the brimstone lasers got shot me. You can't really dodge it sometimes, and I just ended up taking a little bit too much damage and dying. It's a bit of a bummer. I really wasn't too keen on the run, like I said before. It did feel like one of those difficult dailies, and I think the fact I got a 17,000 score and but actually managed to rank in the 150th place is a pretty nice proof that this is one of those dailies which is, again, a bit more on the difficult side. I've definitely made a lot of mistakes in this one. I have no excuses other than the fact that my part of the day, but that's really not an excuse. That's just me trying to be humorous in a very bad way. But it was an enjoyable daily for what it was. I had the chance to play a little bit with my item Telekinesis, which is always an exciting prospect because of how it works, and sadly I wasn't able to use the Forget Me Now, but of course because of it I imagined that there would be a lot of variance, and I saw some really good scores up there on the leaderboard. So good job and good luck to everyone who has yet to play, and to all of those who actually managed to rank pretty well. So with that said, I hope you enjoyed this one, guys, and I hope to see you next time.